Good morning, I'm Ruth Andrus. We're at the JCC on November 11, Veterans Day, and we are going to interview Barbara Gutow. Good morning, Barbara.
Good morning. It is a Veterans Day today. That's a
Very
good day.
exciting to do it on this day because we're going to find out your history. Tell me about your family, your parents, where and when they were born, and how they happened to settle in business here, or why they came to Dallas all at once.
Well, my parents were George and Esther Gillespie, and I was born in Alton, Illinois, which is where both my mom and dad were born. And I still have family sort of floating around in the East, which is nice. I moved to Dallas when I had graduated from college, North Texas State University, as it was called at those days. And so I came here with my roommate, Susan Barenberg, to teach school and start our new single life. And we both met our husbands here. And I met Billy Gutow when I was still single and teaching. He was already finished with law school and he was working. And we've now been married 45 years. Billy's parents came from the Detroit area and moved to Dallas for work. And so my husband Billy was born and raised here and has known people for his whole life. He still has friends from elementary school and preschool and all the way through college. And it was one of the things I love most about him is that he had this solid, wonderful background of friends and family, and his parents were just so giving and open and brought so many people into my life that it was one of Billy Gutow's best assets was his family, believe me. So what else would you like to know? So we've been married 45 years.
Tell me
Sure.
what it was like growing up as a child in Illinois.
It was a good town. Alton, Illinois was on the Mississippi River and located right across the Lewis and Clark bridges going into East St. Louis, Illinois, East St. Louis, Missouri. So I had this childhood being raised on the Mississippi River, and I remember my grandparents fishing, my parents fishing. We ate a lot of catfish, fried catfish, and it was just a great way to grow up. I had lots of cousins. My dad had 9 brothers and sisters, and my mother had a brother and a sister. So there was lots of family and lots of Sunday lunches with yummy food and lots of laughing and being together as a family. And I loved that whole family situation. And so when I met Billy and he had this great family situation, it was just a real comfort zone, and I just loved all that.
Did you know any Jewish children when you were in school? Or?
You know, I really did not. There must have been a Jewish population in Alton, Illinois. It wasn't familiar to me. I was raised in a Bible Presbyterian church. Our schools were segregated. And I just don't believe that I had interaction until I was in college with people who were Jewish. Just didn't know anyone.
So how did that affect you and your parents when you decided to marry a Jewish man?
Well, I think that I'm sure that there were lots of questions from my family, and they asked a lot of questions, but they also raised me to explore what I felt and explore all educational areas and to be open to new ideas. And there were always a diverse group of people in our family, in our friends growing up. So to meet a new culture of people was quite exciting to me. And the more I studied about Judaism, which I did while I was dating Billy, the more I found this religion, this culture, which is so meshed, that it really felt right in my soul that this was an avenue that I could study and learn and raise my children by. And it really just worked for me. And I was very content with it. And when my family saw how content I was, then they never questioned again. They just saw that there was this great family I was going to be hooked up with, and knew I was happy. And that's really what they wanted for me. As it turns out, I have one sister who is Catholic and one sister who is Baptist. I was raised Presbyterian. My parents were Catholic. So, ask me about any kind of religion, I've got an opinion about it.
That's wonderful. It's very liberal and warm.
It's a
and
very liberal
caring.
education, and
Wonderful.
was.
So I suppose that's where you felt comfortable getting involved in Jewish agencies.
Oh, I did, because I think being involved is what my family always did. They were involved. It was about helping people, seeing if there was a neighbor who needed something for dinner, if they had someone who was ill, or volunteering for the PTA. Whatever it was, my parents were conscious of other people and what their needs were, and they helped where they could. So volunteering in the Jewish community was right up my alley. And I had the best time. I have had the best time meeting the most amazing people right from the get-go. People took me in and said, okay, let's learn, let's do it. And I was excited about that, and I have been privileged to work on so many agencies in our community, Jewish Family Services, and help with the Vietnamese resettlement, which was a whole nother story, which was so exciting. The most gracious group of people, the Vietnamese.
Tell me how you were involved there.
Through Jewish Family Service, I was on the board at that time and had been for quite a long time. And through Younger Set, which was the young women's group of educators and fundraisers for the Jewish Federation. And we married together and helped with the Vietnamese resettlement, because we had so much activity working with the Russian resettlement, and I had a huge part in that. So we would look for the apartments, we would meet them at the airports, we would set up the apartments. I remember going to Target with my kids in my basket with other volunteers and their kids, and we would be shopping for radios and linens and pots and pans, and then we would get to meet the families who would come into the home where we had made the beds and set up the kitchens and bought the milk and had everything ready. And it was a great learning experience for my kids, as well as a great learning experience for all of us who volunteered. So when the Jewish community said we need to help with the Russian resettlement, it was easy for the community at large to ask Jewish Family Services and the Jewish community to help resettle the Vietnamese population coming in. And because unfortunately we do that well, we take people in and we make sure that they have a beginning at a new life, and that's what our community does very well. So that was a great experience for me.
Well, tell me, how did you work with the language? Because I know the Russian Jews, there were people here, such as my mother-in-law, Harapal Andrus, who spoke the language of Russian people, whether it was Yiddish or what, and they took them to the doctor, etc. How did you work with the
Vietnamese?
Yes.
Much the same way. There really were people here in our community. They were scattered around at other churches, and it was a citywide commitment that Jewish Family Service took the lead on. So the process was very much the same. We just found people who were interpreters and who did the very same thing in the community to help them resettle. So it was easy. People want to help, they really
You
do.
had the form.
We had the forum, yeah.
So tell me some of your other exciting activities that you shared.
Okay, one of the best, well, it's hard to know what the best is, because if you don't volunteer, you just miss out. That's all there is to it. But I had a chance, just about 30 years ago, I was on the Federation board at that time, and the idea of bringing a home for people with disabilities was time that we cared for a population that was mentally challenged, as the term was in those days. And I was fortunate enough to be asked to look into this from the Federation board to chair this committee of what became real estate people, housing commission people in the city, the educators. This committee was amazing, and we looked into the needs of our community's needs for a home for mentally retarded adults. And that turned into, after a year, the Community Homes for Adults Incorporated, which was Herb Shore, Carmen Michael, and myself, along with a great group of people, really got it started. And we started with one home, and where we had 6 adults, and it was meant that people would be able to live as independent a life as they always could, but with a little guidance. They became members of the community at large. They had jobs. They made their own beds. They took turns going to the grocery store. Whatever you and I do, they did, but with supervision. And now it's grown to 4 homes and some independent living apartments. And over 30 years, it has made such a significant change in a few people's lives that you just can't even imagine. Has done just what our philosophy in life is, and that is to make sure people have a chance to be who they can be. And to have been able to open a couple of doors, and then they just swung it wide open. We just gave them the door and opened it a bit. But the individuals have just taken on life, and they are a great community within our community. They're out there doing the bagel runs, everything. It's such a pleasure to see something that you worked on for so long to really make a difference, and it's good.
It has.
It's been
It's
a
certainly
good-
made a difference in this community. That's just fabulous.
It really has, yeah. It's been great.
All right, you just have some interesting other projects. Tell us.
Oh my goodness, I've had a chance to work with the HIPPY program, helped start with that with National Council of Jewish Women, which is a program for preschool education. It was a pilot program that came to Dallas from Israel. And the National Council of Jewish Women have been involved with creating this HIPPY program that is still in existence in Dallas, working with the parents and the preschoolers, getting them ready for school. And it has become an international program. Dallas was very progressive in taking that on and became a real pilot light.
What area is that mostly? Are there certain areas that you're...
The first area I think started in the Oak Cliff area, but it was just a starting place. It's the HIPPY programs are available to individual families, so through the school system, and it's there for all to participate in. So council has just some great things, and council was also a part of starting the Family Place, which is a home for battered women and children. this was a difficult project to get off the ground. People hide their pain, and they're embarrassed about their pain. But it is now almost 35 years old, the family place, which started with one home on Swiss Avenue for a few families who needed emergency help to get away from the violence. I think the world at large is much more aware of the humanist, the human effort to provide shelter for women and children and to help them get their feet on the ground, to have a place to live safely, and then with food and clothing and getting them the kids into a good school, and teaching the women how to search for a job. And other organizations come in to help with clothing and educational tools, and it's the whole Dallas community, because of NCJW, it's just blossomed into what it is today.
Did you have the pleasure of working with Jerry Beer, who actually founded it?
Yes,
made it happen.
absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. I mean, there have been some amazing leaders in this city, and coming from the Jewish community. They have seen needs and didn't just look, but they dug in and they've done things. And the Annette Strausses and the Jerry Beers and the Carmen Michaels, and the list goes on. And
Hortense
Sikora's.
Sanger.
Yes, Hortense. Oh, gee, I love Hortense. Just the best. But the people were there, and they didn't want to just go to a meeting and have lunch with their girlfriends. They wanted to be discussing important issues for our community and then do something about it. And they did. And I'm happy to say that my children, Taylor, our daughter, and Craig, our son, both married. I got 5 great grandkids. You got to have 30 extra minutes for me to talk about how fabulous my grandkids are.
We'll get there.
You know, like mine are as special as anyone else's, but maybe just a little better. Yeah.
Well, tell me, how did Vogel-Alco originate? Did you start help with that?
I did not help with the Vogel alcove. Of course, the Vogel family really took the horns on that. But it did come through NCJW, and it's just city-wise is amazing.
Well, but where did the children then, if they, of the battered women, how were the children taken care of? If they were gotten out of the home or what?
The battered wives and children at the family place originally went into like that first home that we had on Swiss Avenue, and they were taken care of there. And they lived there until
I didn't know that.
They were able to move out into the community again. So the family place was the emergency. This is where you went. I mean, you made a phone call and you went to a certain area. It might have been a grocery store in a neighborhood, and someone came and they picked you up and they took you to the homes. And the homes, of course, were not listed. They were kept very quiet, and they were popped up all over the city of Dallas because the needs were there all over the city of Dallas. And that's how everything sort of started in that emergency care. And then Vogel Alcove came in for a more stable environment as a next step. But I didn't have the opportunity to work on the ground level on that. I was sort of still over here, you know. So.
Well, it seems like you tell us some more of your wonderful projects.
Well, I think one of the worst projects I did with Janice Music, it was described to us as a garage sale. We were very young and didn't know the term garage sale was a huge, major resale shop of clothing. And people came and shopped and bought gently used clothing, and it was chaotic. It was just totally chaotic. And for years, it was just run by volunteers through National Council of Jewish Women, to the point where we got it running up so well, then so organized. People would bring their things, their clothes, their furniture. We would sort it, we would clean it, we would size it, the whole thing. And then we would have a couple of sales during the years, and people came for like a week. Well, it was great, but they needed it to be 12 months a year, 7 days a week or 5 days a week. And eventually we had to hire someone to take over. And then it ran even better. It really did. So that was an exciting project. But Janice and I spent a lot of time on the floor of the warehouse, I think is what we called it, setting up for the sales. But it raised a lot of money for council, and therefore raised a lot of money for the community projects at large. So
It was fabulous.
it was you remember? Yeah, sure. So we had such a good time.
So tell me, keep talking.
Just
Yeah,
keep talking.
Francis galore.
There's like I said, there's just so many great opportunities, and I think one of the best things, I had the opportunity to serve on the Golden Acres board for a long time, and at that time Herb Shore and then later Marshall Lindner came, and over the years there were more projects that or opportunities for different organizations in the community at large actually to come and help with our senior residences and provide programming, whether it was just serving tea and cake in the afternoon and maybe playing a game of bingo. An organization would come, they would bring their children, their grandchildren, and that interaction with our senior community was so unique. And Herb really built Golden Acres from a small group of people to an agency that was well respected nationally. He was on the national board with the presidents for care for the aged, and really broke some ground. And Dallas was a community to be recognized in senior care. And so over the years, I've had great times taking my kids and going to do different projects, which of course just really was better for me and my family. I think that the residents always enjoyed it, but boy, when you walk out, you just realize that you've had a great afternoon or a great event. And to the point where my mother, Esther Gillespie, my parents were living in Houston and my father had passed away, and my mother needed care. And so I just said she needs to come here and be with my family. And we brought her by ambulance, I remember. She was not doing well. And brought her to Legacy on Central Expressway. And the transition was remarkable. We had done some legwork while my mother was in the hospital, and I was in Houston with my sisters, and had everything set up over the phone. And then when I got here, pleasantly surprised that everything was ready to care for my mom. And she was with us for 3 years here in Dallas, and my children and my grandchildren, her great-grandkids, I mean, believe me, if there is not a person alive, my mother Esther thought those great-grandkids was like the gift from the gods, and maybe they were. And so we had the opportunity to use the Jewish community's facilities that were open to everyone, as they always are. And my mother, who was Catholic, found a very loving, caring environment at Legacy for 3 years. And of course, I suppose most people know that Legacy and our senior homes are open to all religions and all backgrounds. And it's true. There was nothing there. Well, there was everything there for my mother, and that was a good thing. And I hope that she had a good 3 years. I certainly enjoyed having her, and my whole family did. And it was good. Pizza night was always fun. We'd send in pizza and play bingo with the family.
Yes, that sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
Tell us what, I've got your involvement in the Jewish community. What synagogue and what involvement were you into there as well as your children?
Well, Billy grew up at Shereth Israel, and this was in the olden days, like I said, 45 years ago, and Shereth Israel, I think, in the conservative movement here in Dallas was a little cautious about accepting someone to study and convert to Judaism. That was fine. They were not comfortable with accepting me, particularly at that time. And I was sorry because they were so discouraging. That Billy had grown up at Shereth Israel and did Sunday school and Hebrew school and confirmation and the whole family, you know. But it was difficult. And so we took our business elsewhere. We went over to Temple Emanu-El and Rabbi Klein, who, I don't know a person who didn't love Rabbi Klein. I mean, he wasn't the greatest orator, but he was the greatest heart. He really was. And just sort of took me into his loving arms, took Billy and me, and said, well, we don't really have a program for people to study to convert, but we'll just create one as we go along on a weekly basis. And that's what I did. I studied every week with Rabbi Robbins, who was an assistant rabbi at that time, and we just sort of made it up as we went along. I went every Saturday morning for services, and we would partake in lunch after a bar bat mitzvah. We'd take some food into his study, and we would work on a curriculum, and we would talk about the Torah portion for that day and what holidays might be going on at that time. And so I was sort of living it on a weekly basis and studying it on a weekly basis. The program, I think, at Temple Emanu-El has really grown to be very open to bringing people in, very inclusive. And so we found our home at Temple Emanu-El, and our kids, Taylor and Craig, went through preschool and Sunday school, bar and bat mitzvahs, confirmations. My daughter was married there. We've had all of our happy occasions and with our family there. And now Billy and I had our daughter Taylor, her daughter, and Harrison Yoss's, Taylor and Harrison's daughter Avery just did her bat mitzvah. She was amazing, really amazing. But these young people today, I mean, they just soak it all in, and they get up there at age 13 with such confidence. I do not know how they do it. And so, we're starting a whole nother cycle, and the last grandchild, who is 5, just started, with her preschool and area. So we're good. Temple Emanu-El has been a great place for our family to be educated and to learn and to be in their fold, I guess. They've been through a lot of things with our family, and we've been most appreciative of Temple Emanu-El. And now we have this great Rabbi Stern, and he's, rocking the world. And it's good because our community at large needs to grow and to be able to learn. And there's just,
When you came here, did you by any chance work? Or did you
I
just-
taught school. Taught second grade in Oak Cliff, which was fabulous. I loved teaching. Billy says I was very tough, but I thought I was very fair. So, but 7-year-olds are like the best age ever. And I really enjoyed teaching, I really did. But once I started having kids, I was fortunate enough to be able to stay home and be with my kids. And it was a choice for me and for Billy that I could make. And we were fortunate enough that we could do that. And nothing better than raising your kids. There's nothing better. It's a
Have
good
your
job.
kids, or it sounds like you've had interaction with the Gentile community with your projects.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that's been,
Yeah, it's been what it's supposed to be. People working together. That's all it is. It really is.
how did you meet Billy? You told us you were here teaching with your,
I was here teaching. Actually, he was already out of law school, and he was working for his dad, who was in the scrap metal business. And we lived in the same singles apartment unit. He lives sort of upstairs. I live down here, and in those days, there were many areas in the community in Dallas that just young, single, professional people lived and worked, and the environment was open and free, and people met each other easily. There was no dating online, or, I mean, you actually had conversations with people, and that's where we met. So it was good. I think about the fact that my roommate Susan and I were deciding between whether to move to this apartment or to one over closer to Northwest Highway. And we decided on this location, and we both met people, and because of that one day of deciding between this apartment and that apartment, we met our future, I guess, or the next step in our future.
as it says, it's beshared.
The shared.
Well, it's beshared.
Love that word, yeah.
Okay. So what was Dallas like when the children were growing up as versus today?
Well, I think the kids are, just because of the media, there is so much out there. They are so well informed, and yet maybe they're not old enough to understand the information. I think there are just a lot more things to be afraid of. Our kids, we lived in one house, and Taylor and Craig went to school, elementary, then junior high school, and then high school, and we lived in this one neighborhood, much like Billy lived in one place and knew people all through school. My kids had that same great opportunity, which is one of the things I loved that we were able to do. And their friends from elementary school are still their friends, and I love that concrete foundation that they have. Great friends, great families. But I think that, they rode their bicycles, they went down the street to each other's houses, with maybe one mother looking out this door and another mother waiting for the kids to come. We were cautious, but I think it was freer. And then I talked to when I would talk to my parents and Billy's parents, they thought their time was much freer too, and that things have changed. I think that they don't go out and play so much as maybe they take dancing lessons or gymnastics. But I just think some things have shifted, but I see these bright young people growing up, and they have a future ahead of them that we couldn't even imagine. They're just exposed to so much I think it's a good thing. It's just hard for a parent or a grandparent sometimes to grab hold of that. I haven't understood the words to the songs in the last 10 years that they're playing on the radio when I've got my grandkids in the backseat of the car. But nonetheless,
Maybe you don't want to.
maybe I don't want to. Yeah, that's possible. That's possible.
Well, tell me, you've really given us a wonderful spectrum of your activities. If you had to tell us who are your role models, would you tell us? I mean, you know, you've told us what you're most proud of. I'm wondering, could you identify a few of your role models?
Well, not to sound sappy, but Billy's kind of a role model to me. His truth and loyalty to his friends and his family is solid, and I like that. I've liked having that by my side all of these years, and I hope that our kids and our grandkids have seen that. I hope they have. That would be good. But when I was newly married, there were people like Ann Sikora and Janice Sweet, Annette Hogue, Harriet Hoffman. I know I'm going to leave people out, but there was a group of women who were already doing. And I was fortunate enough to be introduced to them at early in my marriage. And they just sort of took me by the hand and said, let's do it. Join the group, got plenty of room, you know, bring it on, Barb, bring it on. And I just had a great opportunity I was just with some of these women Saturday night at an event for Legacy that was celebrating 30 years of Legacy. Or, no, 60 years of Legacy. Yeah, wow, time does fly. And, you know, the Phyllis Summers and Carol Levy's, they were there. They were working in Younger Set, the Jewish Federation, and raising money and doing educational programs. And like I said, they brought me along, and those women made a difference in how this community grew in their own small ways. They really did. And as a group, this community's been lucky. I mean, we had the Fanny Shanons. I mean, really, we were blessed with some great leaders.
Well, thank you. You hopped on board and you just kept on going.
Yeah, my hop is not as strong as it used to be, I'm not hopping as high as I used to.
Well,
but
thank you for the community, what you've done. It's wonderful.
It's been fun, and to bring my family along, they've been real troopers. They've been real troopers, they have. And my family is just the best thing that you can have when you're sitting around that table at your house and they're all laughing and telling stories about what they did at school that week, and just those little twinkling eyes when the candles are lit. It just doesn't get any better than that. It really doesn't.
Thank you so much, Barbara.
Thank you for
That was
inviting me.
So exciting.